College football is back in full swing, which means we're going to do something that I'm going to do every single week, which is pick every single week one college football game using this beautiful website, Playoff Predictor. It's what we use to predict the entire season, and now we're going to do it week by week. So as you can see, this is the Mega Predictor that has every single week one game lined up. We already have picked who won those first four in the week 0 matchup. And so sit back, relax. We're going to go through every single game, giving some analysis on each prediction. We'll start with Sacramento State at San Jose State. This one, pretty intriguing. It's year one of the Ken Niumatalolo era at San Jose State, and I do think they actually did a nice job of putting together a staff, and I do think Niumatalolo is a good coach. However, Sacramento State is no joke of a team either. They beat Stanford last season and are a pretty good FCS team, so I actually think Sacramento State's got a good shot here. I'm going to pick them over San Jose State. And really, we're not even looking at these FCS games over Group of 5 team victories as that crazy of an upset here, because an FCS team has actually beaten a Power 5 team every single season since 2009. So really, it's going to be about identifying where that upset will come into play. I don't think it will be Howard over Rutgers. Rutgers has a pretty clear identity, and under Schiano, they've actually done a pretty excellent job in the non-conference, and so I think after a breakthrough season, they're going to come out strong. Fordham versus Bowling Green is another one that's kind of interesting, but I do think Bowling Green gets the win. Fordham, if I remember correctly, may have won a game over Buffalo last year, maybe the year prior, but I still like Bowling Green there. Another FCS, FBS game, I do think Central Michigan gets this one done at home against Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut, admittedly a team I don't know a ton about, but I know they're not a great FCS team. NC State shouldn't have any problems at home against Western Carolina. I'm really excited to see Grayson McCall out there in an NC State jersey with the mullet. I asked him about that at ACC Media Day, and I was actually the one who got him to confirm the mullet was coming back this season, so that's pretty awesome. And Jordan Waters, the former Duke running back, I think will thrive as well. And here it is, Buffalo hosting Lafayette. Buffalo has been in a really tough spot. They lose Maurice Linguist this offseason. However, I really think that they can start to get things back on the right track. Pete Lembo is their new coach who's had success in the MAC before, and so I think Buffalo can get a nice victory here. Central Florida, another team that I don't think will have many issues. New Hampshire, a solid team though as an FCS school, but I do like Central Florida here. Now, Louisiana Monroe could be in a tough spot. I think Terry Bowden is good for the... It's not Terry Bowden, is it? Is that the guy they just fired? It's Bryant Vincent. Excuse me. I think Bryant Vincent is a solid coach. They signed the most players of any 2024 recruiting class, so they're going to be a really young team. Jackson State is a pretty great program, and the Coach Prime effect is still there. They're still in a good spot, I think. So I like them over Louisiana Monroe here. This one, North Carolina A&T at Wake Forest, is one I've thought about maybe picking an upset. Maybe there's something there, but never a serious thought. Arkansas Pine Bluff is just too terrible to think that there's even a chance there. Toledo at home should be fine in this one. They're going to be a MAC contender. They've got bigger fish to fry. North Dakota State at Colorado. This is one of those ones, man. This feels like the one where North Dakota State gets the job done. My one thing is I just feel like the Bison are not as elite as they once were. And we saw 2 years ago they played at Arizona. They lost, and that ended a long streak of them going on the road and beating not just FBS opponents, but Power 5 opponents. And I think Coach Prime's squad can just eke out a victory, but North Dakota State is still very capable of beating them. So don't take anything for granted in that game. This one's a good one. Coastal Carolina at Jacksonville State, a rare FBS versus FBS matchup, especially in these Thursday matchups. I think I'm going to take Jacksonville State at home. I really like Rich Rod and that squad, and I think they're going to be great in the CUSA. This one is going to be tough for Coastal Carolina. I think there's a lot of pressure on those first couple of recruiting classes for Tim Beck, and we're going to see if he's the guy long-term there. Kansas and Missouri both should be completely fine at home. Same with Tulane against this scrappy Southeast Louisiana team. I'm not expecting any crazy FCS over FBS wins there. UAB at home, Alcorn State, shouldn't be a problem. Shout out to Jacob Zeno. Shout out to the Blazers. That's a team I've played a little bit of that dynasty with. North Carolina at Minnesota, arguably one of the headliners on this Thursday slate with the North Dakota State-Colorado game. I've gone back and forth on this one. I probably went back and forth when I made my preseason predictions. I keep going back and forth, but I'm actually going to trust North Carolina, and here's why. I think the Tar Heels did a really nice job of preparing for life without Drake May by changing their offensive scheme a year early. Now, You could argue that was a poor decision because it limited what Drake May was able to do last season. However, it prepared them for life without him. And with a guy like Omarion Hampton at running back, I think they're going to be really effective doing what they want to do against Minnesota, a team that I think is trending a little bit downward under PJ Fleck. I don't have a ton of stock in them right now. So I like North Carolina in that game. Now, this is another one. Northwestern State at Tulsa. Tulsa could be in trouble, but Northwestern State's not a very good FCS school. Illinois against Eastern Illinois, always fun to see the in-state FCS game, but Illinois should be fine. Utah, I don't anticipate any issues. So that wraps up all of the Thursday predictions, which is why this video is going to come out as early as it does. It'll probably drop on Wednesday. We've got Army against Lehigh. Should be Army, a disciplined squad. Monken and company, I think, are prepped for a solid year in the American Conference. Michigan State hosting FAU. This is an FAU squad that I think under Tom Herman is going to be improved from that underwhelming season last year. They ended up missing a bowl game. Michigan State did that too. Aiden Childs, obviously, very confident, saying that bet the over on their win total, and that might not be a terrible bet. I think Michigan State wins this game, but there are some serious concerns that they're going to have to answer by the time they start to play some real opponents. Oklahoma, once again, another one that's going to be a landslide. They're probably favored by 1 billion points. Temple, Stan Drayton, really in a tough spot. Drayton's going to have to win several American Conference games if he wants to keep his job. Duke, I think, is going to beat Elon, although this is one of the ones I've got my eyes on for a potential upset in week 1. We've got Wisconsin playing host to Western Michigan. I'm going to take the Badgers in this one. I just don't think the Broncos are going to have what it takes, that it factor, to get the job done against a Luke Fickell team in year 2. And then this one is the headliner on Friday. TCU at Stanford, a Power 5 matchup, or Power 4 is what it is now. And I've kind of gone, not necessarily back and forth, but in my brain I've gone back and forth about, can Stanford compete? And what does it look like if Stanford wins this one? And I do think there is a path. However, I'm going to rock with TCU here, which takes us to the Saturday games. We've got a handful of those FCS matchups still. San Diego State, I really am liking Sean Lewis, and they're going to start that true freshman. I believe Danny O'Neal is his name, but that could be completely wrong. I'm excited to see him go play. Robert Morris against Utah State. Could this be a candidate for an upset pick? Utah State losing Blake Anderson earlier in this offseason. I think I'm going to still rock with Utah State, though. Purdue against Indiana State. Think I'm going to take Purdue. And then we've got Navy against Bucknell. Another one where I trust the service academies in those types of games because I feel like they have a pretty high floor in terms of their worst case scenario. Pitt, I think, shouldn't have any issues against Kent State. Kenny Burns just trying to do what he can to get that Kent State team back to being competitive. They had a pretty terrible season after getting gutted by the portal an offseason ago. And then we have this one, Clemson, Georgia. This is the best game of week 1, hands down. I'm not bold enough to take Clemson in this game. I think Georgia's going to win it. Clemson plays better when people are doubting them. And Dabo plays better with a chip on his shoulder and coaches better with a chip on his shoulder. So we'll see. We'll see if Clemson will be motivated for that game because of all the outside noise. And Georgia has that off-the-field stuff. So we'll see. UConn at Maryland. I like Jim Mora. I think he is improving UConn. The rebuild was never going to be linear. Last season was tough, but they just don't want to have what it takes to beat a Mike Locksley team on the road. Locksley is such a great coach in Maryland. Should be pretty good this year. So shout out to Maryland and shout out to the Terrapins here with a week 1 victory. Iowa against Illinois State is an interesting one because Iowa tends to stoop down to the level of opponents sometimes. Illinois State's not a terrible FCS school. And then this one's intriguing too. Austin Peay. A pretty solid one, but they had a scandal with one of their coordinators recently that they had to can, and a lot of weird stuff going on at Austin Peay right now. So I definitely like Louisville in that game. They're in my top 25. I like Jeff Brom, and I think they've got another great portal class in there that if it gels right, it's going to hit big. Virginia Tech at Vanderbilt. Does Vanderbilt have a shot at an upset in this game? I really don't think so. I just think that they went way too heavy in the portal, and they had to because they lost a ton of their talented guys, and it just really sucks for a Vanderbilt team that looked like they were improving suddenly to just go backwards seemingly. So give me Virginia Tech. They should be contenders in the ACC. Penn State at West Virginia. Upset alert is totally all over this one. The alarm is blaring. This is a big game in Morgantown. Does Penn State have what it takes? I think I'm going to take West Virginia. I think it's going to take time for that new system to grow under Andy Kotelnicki, and I just think West Virginia is going to pull off a stunner here. They're an underrated school, and I'm willing to go out on a limb and pick West Virginia. That's one of my big picks I'm hanging my hat on in this week 1. It's a gamble We'll see if it pays off. Tennessee against Chattanooga. Enough said. They're not going to have any issues. Josh Heupel's team will be rolling in week 1. South Dakota State at Oklahoma State. Another one. Do I pick South Dakota State? They won the FCS title. They are no generic, ordinary FCS team. They were like 25th in most rating systems of FBS teams last year. Like, they are legit one of the best FCS teams we've seen in a long time. Give me Oklahoma State, but I'm not confident at all. And I actually really want to pick South Dakota State, but I digress. I will not. Cincinnati versus Towson. Another one. I would not sleep on Towson. They're a team that has stuck around with FBS teams in the past. They're battle-tested, but I do think Cincinnati is talented enough that they'll get out of there with a win. Washington State, another team that's weird against FCS schools sometimes, but give me them over Portland State. Give me Air Force over Merrimack. Once again, trusting those academy schools. We'll see if they can manage with the lowest returning production in the country, though, to have the success they've had the last couple of seasons. East Tennessee State at App State. App State's a school that's going to be competing for a Sun Belt title this year. Give me them in that game. We move on. North Dakota at Iowa State. Excellent North Dakota squad. However, Iowa State is a team I'm just high on, and I don't think they're going to fall asleep and sleepwalk through this game. There's no betting scandal to distract the roster and the squad this year, and for that reason, I think they'll be really successful. FIU, Mike McIntyre at an Indiana squad whose stock I've seen rising this offseason a little bit. People have faith in Curt Cignetti turning this team around in year 1, but I'm going to take Indiana here to start 1-0. We got Western Illinois at Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois with a style of play that could be conducive to a team sticking around. I think I'm still going to rock with Northern Illinois, though. This one, really interesting. Miami of Ohio at Northwestern. Northwestern, a team that is coming off of an 8-win season, and they're going to need this win. In the Big Ten, it's going to be a really tough schedule. They need a win over Miami of Ohio, who has a power conference road victory from last season over Cincinnati. I just think Northwestern has some key pieces back that you really like to see, so give me the Wildcats there. Akron at Ohio State. Ohio State's going to win. They haven't lost to a team in the state of Ohio in a long time, but Akron could potentially end that if they, a modern miracle occurs. Ohio at Syracuse. This one's interesting. Ohio, if this was a last year's Ohio team, I feel like I would have been more confident in them. Unfortunately, they have a really low returning production. They're going to be a pretty young team this year. And Syracuse is a team that obviously has a lot going for them. All the Fran Brown stuff, all the portal guys, and obviously Kyle McCord at quarterback. So I'm rocking with Syracuse here. I think they're 17.5-point favorites, so no reason to think Ohio pulls off an upset there. We've got Miami at Florida. The Gators are a team that nobody believes in, and Miami is a team that some people are believing, but then if you're not a believer in Miami, you're rolling your eyes at the hype they're getting. So this one, a lot of pressure riding on these two coaches, these two programs. I think Miami gets the job done on the road in the Swamp, but that's another one I've kind of gone back and forth on in my head, but on paper, I've always been rocking with Miami. They're my ACC championship pick. What I will say, even if Miami loses this game to Florida, they could still very well win the ACC. It's a losable game. They're going to play plenty of teams that Florida's would be pretty good in the ACC is what I'm saying. I think Florida would be like a top, dare I say top 5 team, top 4 team in the ACC. I don't think that's too crazy to say. Eastern Michigan at UMass. It's going to be a tough battle for Chris Creighton's squad. UMass got an upset victory at the start of last season. Let's give them one at the start of this season. I think Don Brown's squad just stacking portal talent, and they've got a bunch of guys there that beat New Mexico State last year. It was a high-quality win. I think Eastern Michigan's a great MAC school, but give me UMass in week 1. Nebraska and Raiola should be rolling over UTEP. Shout out to Scotty Walden, though. Love what he's doing this offseason. And then give me Texas, the win over Colorado State. This is a good Jay Norvell team, though. They might cover, even though that spread is I think it's like a 24.5-point spread or something like that. Colorado State could hang around in that game. So they've got some really talented playmakers. They've got Fowler Nicolosi at quarterback. They've got Horton at receiver. They're going to be really good. Kennesaw State's first game as an FBS team at UTSA. That's a really tough Group of 5 road game, and I like UTSA at home. Speaking of tough Group of 5 road games, Boise State at Georgia Southern to start the season. Clay Helton's Eagles with Tyler Budge, the recent addition at quarterback. Shout out to him. They're going to be hosting Boise State's 13.5-point favorites. I really like Georgia Southern plus 13.5 here, but I'm going to rock with Boise State. Let's not get too in the weeds on the spreads. This isn't a betting prediction. This is just the predictions for the games, but I like Boise State to get that road victory. However, don't be surprised if Georgia Southern's in that game in the fourth quarter. Old Dominion at South Carolina. Could Old Dominion do it again? It's a team that has had a history of upsetting power conference teams, even on the road, but No, I don't think it's happening. I think South Carolina is going to play Beamer ball. I think we're going to see Lenora Sellers doing some good stuff in this game. I'm excited to see him continue to develop. Marshall, give me the home win over Stony Brook. UC Davis at Cal is an interesting one. Last season, Sacramento State beat Stanford. That was the one game that was an FCS over Power 5 upset last year. And now I'm looking at UC Davis, a really good FCS team, on the road versus Cal. The one thing that's keeping me from flirting with this pick right here is that Fernando Mendoza is a fan of the show and a fan of the channel. And for that reason, we're going to rock with Cal. I stand with Fernando Mendoza. I don't know if he's been named the starter. And so for that reason, actually, if they name... it's not Ben Finley over there anymore. I believe it is... this is terrible. Well, whoever else it is. I think it's TJ Finley. I don't think it's TJ Finley either. I can't remember who the other guy is at Cal, but if they get named the starter, maybe I'll flip my pick to UC Davis until they name Mendoza the starter. But let's flip to the next game, North Texas at South Alabama. I've kind of thought about this game a little more than I probably should. South Alabama welcoming in the Major Applewhite era. North Texas in year 2 under Eric Morris. It was underwhelming last season. They really infused a lot of portal talent for back-to-back off seasons, and some could argue that's led to some of the volatility we've seen, but I do think they just have a little bit more going for them than South Alabama, so I think I'm actually going to pick North Texas on the road to get an upset. Well, I don't even know if that's an upset, but to get a victory. Norfolk State at East Carolina. Norfolk State is a team that we really saw go out there and compete last season versus Florida A&M. Maybe there's something there. Maybe East Carolina is a team that could struggle here. I think I'm still going to pick East Carolina. I do think they're in for a bounce back here. Liberty should have no issues versus Campbell. But Campbell is a team that has had some momentum, I've noticed, over the years. We've got Eastern Kentucky at Mississippi State. Mississippi State should not have any issues. Jeff Lebby's first win as a head coach in that case. Richmond at Virginia. The stats do not lie. An FCS school has beaten a power conference team every single season since 2009. The one exception being the COVID year, but that was not really a full season. There weren't as many opportunities. In fact, there might not have been many at all. I think I'm going to pick Richmond in this game, just so I can pick one of those upsets and try to call it, try to predict it. It's hard to predict, but I think Richmond can beat a Virginia team that just named Anthony Calandria the starter. Calandria, as we know, as he showed last year, he's a really sporadic player. He can be prone to turnovers as well. So if he turns the ball over a couple times early, it's a good Richmond squad. I think they could pull one out. Oregon State, I'm going to take them over Idaho State. Idaho State's just not very good. You've got Giovanni McCoy was just named the starter. He played at Idaho, so he's going to be really motivated against Idaho State. They've got Jam Griffin at running back. And this offensive line at Oregon State, I think, is still really, really good. They're all upperclassmen. They're all probably going to be gone next year, so it's about Trent Bray reloading that. But there's talented players on offense that I think they can pick up, and Trent Bray was formerly the defensive coordinator. So I think Oregon State going to come out the gate pretty strong in this game. We got another one, Central Arkansas at Arkansas State. I think Butch Jones' squad comes out with a win. And talk about another trap game, Baylor against Tarleton State. Could Tarleton State be in this game late? I think they could. Tarleton State is also a solid team. They had a great year last year at the FCS level. They come up with a win in week 0. And then you've got a Baylor team that's trying to figure things out. Jake Spavital, an offensive coordinator, trying to find their identity. I still think Baylor wins this one, but I won't rule out a potential upset. UT Martin's a great school, but Kansas State, so sound, so well coached. Avery Johnson's going to be great. That backfield with Dylan Edwards, DJ Giddens should be phenomenal. We've got Tennessee Tech at Middle Tennessee. Derek Mason, look for him to get a victory in his debut as the head coach at Middle Tennessee. We've got Sam Houston at Rice. Rice, I think Mike Bloomgren and company going to feel the heat, get the win here. Sam Houston State in a position where they just need to win some of these close games. And if this is another close loss, it's going to hurt because they lost a lot of close games last season, and they started I believe it was 0-6, 0-7 or something like that. Pretty bad. We've got Nevada traveling to play Troy. This is a Nevada team that I really like right now because of the effort they showed against SMU. And if they can do that against a Troy team that I think is a little overrated right now, why not? Give me Nevada in that game versus Troy. And it could totally just be that week 0 bias. If we saw Troy last week as well and Troy looked good, maybe I'd be more rational here. But because I've seen Nevada go out there and play well and look way better than they look on paper, I think I'm going to pick them for this game. So Western Kentucky, Tyson Helton's squad can score. It's going to be a true test of Alabama's secondary, and I know it's not a crazy team. It's Western Kentucky. You might laugh at that, but we'll learn if Alabama's secondary has some weaknesses. If Western Kentucky scores like 28 points, it's not going to matter because Alabama's going to score 60, but could be something to learn there, and that's what we're doing in week 1. We're learning. UNLV at Houston, another one that's going to have a close spread, going to be tightly contested. Houston, year 1, Willie Fritz, they bring in a lot of portal guys. They lose a lot of portal guys. UNLV, a little bit more stable, but there were some things that happened in the offseason that you don't necessarily like to see. I know Barry Odom's in for the long haul there at UNLV trying to rebuild them, and he's going to experience, I think, a little bit of back and forth early on trying to rebuild a program. It's not usually linear, especially at a place like UNLV that historically doesn't have a ton of success. So we could see UNLV take a small step back, but I still think they'll be in the Mountain West title game. But if they're not, I don't think it's anything crazy. Ole Miss against a solid Furman team. Give me the Rebels to win there. South Florida at home against Bethune-Cookman. I don't see South Florida overlooking this game. I think Alex Golish's squad will be ready to go out and play well and win that game. North Alabama at Memphis. North Alabama, a team that's already 0-1. They got smoked last week by Southeast Missouri, and Memphis is going to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the group of 5. So give me them. Seth Hennigan, Ryan Silverfield, ready to make a run at that college football playoff. Alabama A&M at Auburn. We saw Auburn lose to New Mexico State last year. I don't think anything like that will happen in this week. Notre Dame at Texas A&M. We got another headliner as we sift through these FCS games. I think this one's going to be a banger. This one's going to be at Kyle Field. It's going to be electric, and I think it's going to be back and forth, but I do like Texas A&M. And Notre Dame has struggled to get out to fast starts the last couple of seasons. And Mike Elko, I think, is going to notch a signature win. I think he's a great coach. They needed a substance over flash coach. They got it. And I think the defense for A&M is really going to impress against Notre Dame. Abilene Christian at Texas Tech. Texas Tech is just too good in Lubbock to even consider a crazy FCS over FBS upset. So give me Texas Tech. Fresno State at Michigan, it's the MacGuffin game. If you don't know what the MacGuffin is, maybe someone will tell you, but if not, you can go look it up. It's basically like the lineal belt of college football. Michigan has it right now. I don't think they'll have any issues versus Fresno State. Another team and a program in a weird spot, having lost their head coach as well. Suddenly, right before the season, they've got to scramble to replace him, but they still have a good team that could compete in the Mountain West. Idaho at Oregon. Oregon should not have any issues versus Idaho. The Vandals are an excellent FCS school, though. I know I've said that about a lot of them, but there's a lot of good ones out there. Southern Miss at Kentucky. No reason to think that Southern Miss will really be in this one. Kentucky, very talented, especially at the line of scrimmage. They should really bully these guys. But Will Hall facing a pivotal year at Southern Miss, and it's going to be key for them to have success in the Sun Belt and in Sun Belt play. Anything here is just a bonus, figuring out your team a little bit more. We've got Southern Illinois. The Salukis travel to play Brigham Young. This is another one of those Power 5 FCS upsets I was talking about that is on my radar. I do think BYU will win, but I'm not too confident in BYU's quarterback situation. I'm not too confident in BYU's offensive line. And Southern Illinois is a team that beat an FBS team last season in Northern Illinois and also just has a history of sticking with and around teams. In fact, I think Southern Illinois has had back-to-back seasons where they've beaten an FBS school, which is impressive. We got Nicholls State versus Louisiana Tech. Look for Sonny Cumbie to start off the season with a W. Texas State over Lamar should be a surefire bet. G.J. Kinney and company are in a fantastic spot, ready to make a Sun Belt title run. We've got Louisiana playing host to Grambling. And I think Louisiana gets an easy win. Michael Desmarais and the Ragin' Cajuns, I think, are going to be a sleeper in the Sun Belt as well. James Madison at Charlotte. I've seen the spread come out in this game. It's only 6.5 in James Madison's favor, which is a little surprising to me. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to take James Madison. I'm going to take Bob Chesney, having a good squad his first season. This is a great program. And Charlotte is going to be interesting to watch this year. Biff Poggi trying to find a way to make this portal experiment work. We've got Southeast Missouri at New Mexico State. Part of me thinks for a second about flirting with the Southeast Missouri State pick. They looked really good last week. New Mexico State is a team that is replacing a lot and trying to rework this team after the sudden retirement of Jerry Kill, which is just terrible to see. Kill had this program in such a good spot. I think they're going to be in a significantly worse spot this year, but I do think at home they'll be able to eke out a victory here. We're left with a couple games here. Wyoming at Arizona State. This is one game I will be at. I think the Sun Devils should be all right at home and should win this game over Wyoming, but it's a little spooky. This Wyoming team could certainly get the job done, pull off an upset just like Fresno State did at the Sun Devils last season. We'll see Sam Levitt go out there and cook, and I think that ASU offense is going to look a lot better when all healthy. We've got New Mexico traveling to play Arizona. Shout out to New Mexico. I thought they put in a really good effort last week versus Montana State. Sucks they couldn't get the win. Arizona should look good in their season opener. They should beat New Mexico pretty handily. We've got Weber State at Washington. I do think that this is another one that's kind of on the radar. A lot of new faces at Washington, potentially, maybe time for things to gel. Weber State is fantastic, but I'm going to pick Washington. I'm not that crazy. And that leaves us with the last two games. USC LSU in Las Vegas. I will be at this game, and I am going to rock with USC. I think that offense is going to look really good and go out there with Miller Moss. And I think LSU maybe will have some concerns offensively. They have a great offensive line, but to me, the real concern is defensively for LSU. I think their defense could potentially be in a worse spot than USC's because I expect this USC defense to show some improvement in this week 1 matchup and just come out and surprise some people. It's just one of those games where, yeah, I have LSU rated a little higher than USC, but I just think in this spot, week 1, why not? Give me USC. The other thing that I really like historically is the fact that LSU has really struggled in those season openers recently. They lost a pair of times to Florida State. They have a preseason or early season loss to Wisconsin. They have an early season loss to UCLA. And so even if you're just talking about the Brian Kelly era, it's been 2 straight losses to open the season. And so I think I'm going to rock with USC. And last but not least, we have Boston College at Florida State. It's an interesting one. We've already seen Florida State play, and it was ugly. But Georgia Tech really controlled that game and controlled the clock. Can Boston College do that against Florida State? I don't think that's the way Bill O'Brien rolls, and I don't think Boston College is going to come out with that mentality. And because of that, I think Florida State is going to be able to get their feet under them, actually look competent offensively, and defensively, I think they'll clean some things up. I don't anticipate Boston College bullying them at the line of scrimmage like Georgia Tech did. So give me Florida State, and that wraps up every single prediction for week 1. We got through every single game, a lot of games to pick because there's so many FCS games in this week. So these videos will be a little shorter as we go forward, but maybe they'll stay about the same length because there is a little bit more analysis to be had when there are 2 FBS teams in a game moving forward. But that does it for this video. Let me know down in the comments what you think of my predictions. Which ones do you think I got right? Which ones do you think I got wrong? I am so hyped for this week, and it all starts on Thursday. So get hyped for the college football season. Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I will see you guys next week.